for another PewTube here from Kevin Inoue here with Fight Designer LLC. I don't know how many more of these I'm going to get off this summer. We'll see. It might be a little bit of a crazy time, but I've been playing with some stuff that I wanted to share. So the impetus for this was high school that I worked with ages ago, back when I lived in Seattle. I was doing Three Musketeers choreographed by a friend of mine that I've known, again, back from my time in Seattle. And they wanted some muskets, and so I got them all boxed up and carefully cut some styrofoam to fit around them perfectly and all that. And it was going to be over $150 each way to ship those things. Because the muskets that I've got are long, very long, a lot of muskets were, and also heavy. You know, they're mostly wood and metal. And so while those are great for some things, they're not cheap to ship. And that is a problem because as a props rental business, there's only so much you're going to get in terms of local gigs. And if you can't transport things, if you can't ship them to someone else, it's a little bit less useful to be storing all this crap in your basement for however many years. So some of those I have gotten to use on Three Musketeers productions that I did, and that was great. But a big box of them was just too cost prohibitive. So that got me thinking, what is something that'd be a little shorter, a little lighter, but that would work for a production of Three Musketeers, because there's various versions of that out there right now. And a lot of them do require muskets. I mean, they're musketeers. They do most of their fighting with rapiers, but yeah, there's some muskets too. A couple of things that I've done to play with that. One of them is a purchase that I made inspired by my friend Jeff Kent, working on one down at a solo rep. Of Musketeers down there, and I think he was in turn inspired by some stuff I did on Clue and other things, which is using Airsoft props to shoot powder, arrowroot powder, to get a little bit of a dust cloud, as though there were some smoke when it fires. And obviously you still have to sync it up with a sound cue because it doesn't go boom, and it doesn't flash, but I went ahead and got one of these. This is a CO2 Airsoft. Obviously I haven't messed with it yet. I haven't taken off the orange tip, and I will. But the cool thing about this is you can go through the motions of loading it, put in some of that organic arrowroot powder, tamp it down, whatever, and then when it fires, you can get a little poof of CO2, which can give you that smoke cloud. And Jeff Kent was kind enough to show me a clip of his. He has a slightly different model. This is the George Washington flintlock pistol. There's a couple others that are, I think, just billed as like pirate flintlock pistols or whatever. And now there's still stuff to be figured out in terms of wadding. What do you use to stop the powder from falling out, and how do you keep it from gunking things up? But that'll be something that I'll play with next time that I have a need for a firing effect. But it's not necessarily lighter, and it doesn't solve the question of the big long muskets that are too expensive to ship. So for that, I got to thinking about my 3D printer, which you can hear going in the background over here. Now, if we're looking at historically accurate musketeers, we're probably looking at matchlocks or maybe wheel locks. Those are both going to be more rare than flintlocks or caplocks. And honestly, a lot of the wood ones that I have are actually caplocks or flintlocks. But, you know, whatever. Most audiences aren't going to know the difference. One of the things that popped up is this gentleman goes by the company name CarneyRex on Etsy, selling STL 3D printing designs to make your own NERF blasters. I had previously done one of the wheel-lock pistols with a shoulder stock. I can drop a picture in here that's already on my website, but it's still in that box of props. It was too expensive to ship. This would be an example of their flintlock. All right, and as you can see, it's kind of chunky. It's a little big. When you compare it to a wood and metal one, it's a little bit like leaner and meaner. Plus, you know, these also have some heft to them, and you can also, you know, if you need to, do some choreography with them. These are not sturdy enough to do any choreography with. But if you just need something that your character can carry around, I don't know how much I'd trust the belt clips on these, but they have them. And in theory, you can clip this onto your baldric or whatever, pull it out. And again, these were made to be able to fire NERF darts or rival balls. Now, obviously on stage, you don't want to be shooting projectiles. I'd still love to find a way to be able to use these to generate that powder puff effect of smoke. But the way most of these are set up, there's rubber bands holding back a little plastic sled that pushes forward, which means there's open areas in there. So if you just dump stuff in, it's gonna fill in gunk up all up the inside. So I don't think that as is these could work. I'd have to figure out another way to do that. There are some spring-powered models, but I'll get to that later. But they do imitate some of the functions of a flintlock, both the mechanism motion and shooting a Nerf dart, if you really wanted to shoot a Nerf dart. Now, this is a little chunky. They do have another version that is also the same kind of stock as on the wheel-lock pistol. Here's one that's just started. You can see it's got a little bit of a smaller grip, a little more elegant size and shape, but same idea, and the barrel's going to be just as big and chunky. This is way thicker. Like, this would be so heavy if this were actually steel. So because they're trying to shoot Nerf darts and things, these do end up really big. I kind of wish they had an Airsoft version maybe that was made by Airsoft, and so it could have a much smaller barrel diameter and thinner barrel profile, but I guess that's not where the market is, and that'd be a little trickier for the mechanism to work probably. In terms of fragility, it's not going to be as sturdy as a wooden metal, but definitely as much so as these resin ones. I picked up some of these a while back. These were made as like wall decoration. I put some clear epoxy coat to make them a little sturdier, but you know, costume stuff, sure. Wave them around in the air, sure. Nothing else, they're gonna break. And with 3D printed ones, at least in theory, if a part breaks off, I can print out a replacement part, which is nice. I've also done that when I've gotten wooden metal replicas that had a missing part. So the frizzen pan on this, the cover, is 3D printed on this slightly beat up, otherwise metal and wood replica. What I really liked was the designs from, if you go to like the Degain manual, Jakob Degain, that was widely copied throughout Europe and shows matchlock drills that are great for this idea of musketeers. If you want a video example of battle in that time, look up Alla Triste, the Viggo Mortensen swashbucklers. Some great examples of matchlock and pike combat of that era. The only matchlock that CarneyRex had is this, and this is actually a Japanese style matchlock. So for your samurai costume. But it's basically the same idea as the others. It's 3D printed. It does have some moving parts and is designed to be able to, once again, fire Nerf darts. So you can chamber this, drop a dart down there, and in terms of the matchlock mechanism, it's a little tricky, but if you get this to latch in right, there we go, and then there's a pan cover that flips out, and this is just a bit of rope right now. Powder load later. It is something where if you wanted to have the action of having your actors, this one actually didn't come with the brass thing, I added this from a different model. If you wanted your actors to be able to go through the action as though they were loading something, you know, obviously they can mime the actual powder and things like that, but it doesn't look good enough that it would probably hold up in most film close-ups, even with a little paint job. This is just a quick paint job I gave it here. But it's a little something. This plate here wants to pop up. There's no screw on this end, and so that's one issue, is if it's too loose, this trigger doesn't catch. If it's too tight, the trigger doesn't release it. So finding that kind of happy point, and then I need to epoxy it there or something, but that area where it'll start to stay back and then still release the way it would in a real matchlock. Right, where you'd have to keep that lit, your slow fuse. But again, this is plastic. So while it's fairly sturdy just to like run around with, you couldn't really do any choreography with it. So one thing that I want to try maybe, to be able to use this for a character in Three Musketeers, if I were choreographing this, I would want a distinctive weapon for each of the 4 Musketeers. Yes, D'Artagnan counts. This could certainly work for one of them, but as sort of like a sawed-off, you know, equivalent of a sawed-off shotgun or rifle, like the mare's leg rifle of its time. But what I'm thinking I'll do is extend this up a bit, because if you look at the period ones, there's often a really sharp cut here, big scoop. So if I extend that up and then put a steel bar, mild steel bar, along here, create sort of a knuckle bow effect as a trigger guard, which some of them did have something out there, and then run that up here along the edge underneath where the ramrod goes. That would give us essentially not just a steel reinforcement for sturdiness, but something you could use theoretically to parry a rapier, do a little hilt beat, come in, do like a hilt bash or something. You know, it would let you do a quick bit of choreography with this if you needed to. So you could have your shot, bang, bang, boom, right? And then you can set it down, draw your sword, and have your proper rapier duel, as we expect from productions of Three Musketeers. So, the good news is it's short. It's much, much lighter than steel and wood. And it's doable. I mean, is this serpentine gonna break at some point? Yeah, quite likely. But, you know, one screw, one easily printed replacement part, and I could send spares out on a rental, so that if this does break off, you can just replace it. If this thing breaks off, it's just decorative, it's not even really needed. Another thing I sometimes do with these that I haven't yet on this one is a clear epoxy resin coat for durability, especially once I know that I'm happy with the paint job and the placement of that panel and stuff. I might go ahead and do an epoxy coat on this as well. But, you know, these are relatively inexpensive to print. I've got another one going right now that's the musket style, and it's more, you know, Revolutionary War musket era. But it is still shorter than those steel and wood ones that I've got, so it'd still be definitely cheaper to ship between being lighter and being shorter. So I'm kind of curious. We'll see how these work. We'll see if anybody's interested in them rental-wise. That one that I boxed up did include the wheel lock pistol. So that would have been the first time that went out on a rental gig, and I was kind of curious to see how that went. I guess we'll have to find out another time. But let me know in the comments. Is this the kind of thing that you'd be interested in using? If you were a choreographer, would you be comfortable using 3D printed plastic guns for some of this stuff? They don't have the durability of the solid cast rubber or, you know, solid cast plastic, although they're probably just as fine as the resin, epoxy resin, which used to be one of the standards for rifles and shotguns and things. I think I always got chipped when I sent them out on gigs. But it's, you know, it's an interesting possibility to add into the mix as far as I'm concerned. I'm a little worried that if you put too many of them together with other types, that's the other question, is like, could these live in the same world? And I think, yeah, you know, if you paint them up enough, sure. I think these could live in the same theatrical world. I'd buy that. And this one is, again, a steel and wood replica, and this one is the 3D printed plastic. So, as is, fresh out of the printer. You know, this is the lighter wood, but it does look a little bit plasticky, right? This is not painted at all. And then often they need a little refinishing as well. You can see I've been doing some kind of patching and filling on this to smooth it off a bit. This one at the barrel tang, I had to do a little filling to kind of flush that out a bit. And I'll probably do more before I actually paint them and finish them. These are some of the musket parts as they are starting to come together for the next one that I'm working on. You get the idea. It's not all together yet, but that'll be about the size of the thing once it is done. There's also a bayonet that goes on the end. So anyway, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are, if you would, if and how you would use them, what you would need, what are the criteria, would you really need a way to sling it and hold it? Some of these pistols come with a little ring on the bottom, but again, I wouldn't trust this much because it is just printed plastic, and it could well break at some point, just the same as the little belt clip could. But you know, you can make holsters for them too. Would you trust something like this? Would you be okay with the look of something like this for a Treasure Island or a Three Musketeers or whatever? What modifications would you want? Would you want it clear-coated in epoxy to make it a little bit tougher? Would you want things like a metal bar along the bottom to be able to do, you know, to block swords with it if you needed something like that? Do you really need that smoke effect? Is that worth investing the time in trying to figure out how to solve that? The musket that I'm doing, it's spring-powered from the back, and so you do have to buy the right size tubing. But that means that there is a tube and a spring and a self-contained system a little bit more. So that one we might be able to get a little powder puff out of. Not sure yet. But yeah, I'm just curious about your thoughts. And as I have little bits of time when I need to decompress and play with something that makes sense to my brain, sometimes more than, I don't know, computers or occasionally people, this stuff can make a little bit more sense. And it can be nice and relaxing to paint and grind and sand. Can you order these things pre-made? Yes. Yes, there are people on Etsy who will happily sell you any of these pre-printed. And if you don't have the interest in taking the time to do this, probably makes more sense. There's a fair amount of time that goes into these, and inevitably things break and all. Even if you have a 3D printer, you might want to get the files so you can make backup parts, but still buy a pre-made one if you're just wanting the prop itself. Me, I actually do kind of enjoy working on this stuff. I kind of enjoy making things. I'm weird that way. So it's half hobby as much as anything else. Maybe more than half. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, if there's anything that you're dying to know or see or share, you can reply in the comments, you can subscribe, you can email me, you can let me know what it is that you're interested in. I'll probably be moving the business at some point this summer, which means packing stuff up. So there might be times when things are not available. So if you know ahead of time also that you've got an upcoming gig, by all means, please contact me and let me know so that I can make sure that I leave stuff out for you or box it up separate so it's ready to go. Until next time, play safe, stay sane, stay healthy, and I will see you later.